Hello. Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope people are here.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, we're so excited. Our live show for December is happening a little early just because of the holidays.
Yes.
And yeah, and we are joined by Kennedy Ryan, the author of our book club read. Yes. So excited to have you. We had you like 2 years in a row. This is our third year, I think, right?
Whenever you call, I will
We
answer.
love you. Yes, we love you. Yes.
I love you guys too.
Are we getting comments? Okay, yes.
Yeah, they're popping up now. They always lag a little bit at the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Yay, we're getting people. Hello, everyone. Hi, Tori. Yay. Okay, awesome.
Oh, hold on 1 second, guys. I'll be right back.
Okay. From the Philippines. Wow. What time is it in the Philippines? Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm in a co-work space and somebody came by asking me a question. Like, are you supposed to be here? Yes, I am. I am.
We're good. We're good. We had someone from the Philippines showing up.
Hi.
That's crazy. I love that.
What time is it in the Philippines?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Wow. Okay, not too bad, but
nice. Top of the morning to you.
All righty. So I actually listened to this book in audio. I was really debating whether to do ebook or audio, but I was like, I'll just do audio because I always love your audios and your narrators.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what everyone else did. You know, did you read the paperback or the ebook, or did you do the audio as well?
I always can't wait, so I always read the paperback first. And then I'm like, with Real, I still haven't gone back. I bought Real, I think, during one of the Audible sales because I still haven't listened to that. And I know that is like an immersive experience, but I definitely for my reread want to go back and listen to this.
Yeah, Real is, I always tell people, if you are even vaguely an audiobook person, Real is the one one of the ones you should listen to by audio. Hi, Melissa. Yeah.
Is it Jacoby Diem and Wesley do the
yes, they did. And Audible selected it as one of their best audiobooks of 2022.
Oh my gosh.
Which is amazing. Yeah. And you remember Real won an Audi with Jacoby. So Jacoby's like my guy.
Yeah, his voice is fantastic. Did he do Grip too?
He did. He did.
Okay, yes.
He did Hookshot. He did Grip. He did Queen Move. He did Real. He's kind of my go-to.
Do you think he's gonna? Oh, go ahead.
This was my first time working with Wesley, and I love her. I absolutely love Wesley, so she's great.
I was gonna say, do you think Jacoby's gonna come back for the rest of the series, or do you think you'll choose different narrators?
I think I'll probably choose different narrators for each couple. I like with the same with like with the Hoop series, you know, it's all different couples, different narrators for the different couples. And I think I'll probably do that with this series too, just to make it feel distinct, you know. But I'm going to get Jacoby in wherever I can. But I do have an Audible first coming out in February, and we may have Jacoby and Wesley back for it. So all like cover reveal and title reveal and all of that stuff will be coming soon.
Is it?
What were you about to say?
Is there something completely different? New or?
It is. Audible approached me about writing something for them that's an Audible first. So it'll just be an audio in February, and then it'll come out later, like in paperback and ebook. And it's a novella, so it's quick, it's fun, but there's some like really fun stuff I have planned for it. You know, I've always got something like up my sleeve. So I'm excited.
I love your novellas. I read the close-up and oh my God, I loved that one.
I do too. I use different narrators for that one, but I love Most of my books usually are like emotionally really heavy. And the novellas tend to be like just really spicy and fun and quick, and kind of a reprieve for me too, as far as the writing process. And I just love how the close-up turned out. It's just like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Issa Rae, who does Insecure, the show Insecure on HBO. Each year she does this big yacht party, and she goes #yacht shit. Like all the pictures she posts is like this huge yacht party, and it's like #yacht shit. And every year I'm like, I'm gonna write a book that's like all about a huge yacht party, and that's what inspired the close-up. So, and I got to bring all the Hoops couples back together.
Yes, that was my favorite
too.
part.
It was a lot of
crossover.
Yes, it was a lot of fun.
Do you think you'll have any crossovers in Skyland series? Like any cameos happening? Did we get any cameos here? I don't remember.
We got a little Easter egg with Lotus from the Hoop series, because Hendrix is talking about a line because Hendrix is a full figure character, a plus size character. And she talks about a plus size line by Lotus Ross called Mo Better. I think it's Mo Better. So she drops that in there. So it's an Easter egg, more than a cameo. But I did have people go, Lotus, sending messages like, I saw Lotus. I like to do that, even between like universes, so you'll see Grip pop up in certain places, and then you'll see like, Lotus pop up here. It makes them feel real to me. So I do that whenever I think about it.
And it's a little easy too when you have, something fashion related, and then music related as well. You can just drop that in.
Absolutely. And of course, the close-up was a crossover between the world of Real and the world of the Hoop series. That just kind of absolutely collided those two, because Takira, the heroine from the close-up, is Neva's best friend from Real. So
yes. Okay, going through the comments. Monica, I'm still salty. But before I let go, yes, I did my own little version of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and definitely included Before I Let Go as a second chance romance favorite.
Yes, I think we all, we know that, the Goodreads Choice Awards, it's definitely a lot about popularity, but I think that it's also, it's a part of a system that doesn't always have, especially marginalized authors, recognized. And that's not for me to say, I think that my book should have been recognized. I just think overall, a lot of people express disappointment in how white and not queer, it was. But I think that's indicative of a larger problem, that we're negotiating right now about the peripheralization of marginalized authors. So I think that's a broader discussion.
That's true. Something a little bit bigger than what we can discuss right now.
Right. But I love Emily. Anybody who knows me knows Emily and I are very good friends. She was on tour with me virtually. And when we get together, you have to like pry us apart. So
are you able to choose a favorite? Are you able to choose a favorite Emily Henry book though?
Let me see. I really, really, really love Book Lovers. Like, it's so meta, but Beach Read because it holds like a special place in my heart, just because it was the first book I ever read of Emily's. And I literally went right to her DMs. She didn't know me from Adam. And I started fangirling, and I went down I started reading her YA stuff. Like, I read, I think it's called A Million Junes. That one, like, I went down an Emily Henry like rabbit hole, and we just bonded over my obsession, I guess.
That is so cute. You just slid into her DM.
Oh yeah. And I don't think she had read me, but then she read Queen Move, and then she's when I did like a little bit of promo for Real, she went, you know, she did a virtual tour stop with me for real. She did a virtual tour stop for me with Before I Let Go. I'll do anything she needs me to do. We're very supportive of each other. So I am happy for her. Very, very happy for her.
I agree. I like the best too of her backlist. So I love that one.
I love People Leaving on Vacation. That one.
And that one's just been optioned. Yes. That one's just been optioned. Mm-hmm. It's so funny because she went on Good Morning America and was talking about Real. And I didn't know she was going to do that. And she had messaged me. She was like, make sure you watch Good Morning America tomorrow. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to announce your movie? And then I forgot to watch. And I was like, she's like, did you watch? And I was like, did you announce your movie? She's like, no, I was talking about your book. I was like, oh, I didn't know. She was like, I couldn't tell you. And I'm
how did she know before you?
You mean about Real? She knew that she was going on Good Morning America to talk about Real. Okay. So she was like, she slid into my DM. She was like, make sure you watch Good Morning America tomorrow. And I was like, oh my gosh, her movie's going to be announced. And I thought it was, I'm such a dork. Speaking of People We Meet on Vacation, that's what I thought was going to happen. I was like, are they going to announce it on Good Morning America? Such a goofball. But I'm really, really excited about that adaptation. So many good romances are being optioned now, which is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any news for your option films? Mm-hmm. You know,
we are definitely working behind the scenes. I will just say that. There's a lot of energy, and a lot of interest, which is amazing. So as soon as I have something like solid, you'll probably read it in Deadline or somewhere.
I mean, that's good to hear, because usually it's like you hear something gets optioned and then it never really goes anywhere after that.
Right. I mean, that's still a possibility for sure. I mean, we are working on All the King's Men, definitely, but I think I've never had as much interest as I have for Before I Let Go, ever. Like, we have a lot of interest for that. So I'm hoping that something comes of it. You never know.
Ooh, that'd be exciting.
Okay, breaking news. Interest.
Okay, so here's my stack of your books. Like, I cannot believe I have this many copies.
It's awesome.
So I have the ARC at the bottom.
Yes.
And then 3 finished copies. Okay, 2 of them forever sent. But then one was the order from the Ripped Bodice, because I went to go see you.
Yes, you did.
And then it came with this really nice.
Oh, that's so pretty.
Yeah, I love that. I love that
Let's Stay Together.
Yes.
Did you commission it, or did the
publisher? I did. Yeah, Bryce is the artist, and I did commission it. I wanted to do something special and fun for those who pre-ordered, and I wanted to pull in the song "Let's Stay Together" because it's such a thread that's pulled through the book. So, yeah,
it's gorgeous. And then the special edition that I got, that's a surprise hardcover because it was supposed to be a paperback.
It was. Yes, it was.
But I love it.
I do too. And so many people have been asking me how they can get that, and they don't have any more, but there is an interest list. There's a link for an interest list for a second printing, because we've had so many people asking about it. So I have that link somewhere, but yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so if you missed out, go fill that out.
Yeah, they're doing a second printing, so good for them.
Do you have any other book box plans, like special edition plans? I know those are huge right now.
There is another, actually, I have a pretty big one, actually. I'm sure you guys have heard about RomCon that Melissa from Steamy Lit Box is doing is it August? The dates of 2023 don't exist in my head yet, but I know I'm going. I don't even know if I've announced that I'm going yet, but I am going to be there. But I know that she's announced that we're doing special edition grip covers for RomCon. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Have you seen the covers or anything?
We're working on them now. We're working.
Ooh, okay.
I've seen some first drafts, and so we're like refining and working on them. I can't wait for the finished copy because people always love grip stuff, you know, like
Yes.
diehard grip fans, like love
right
all
here.
the grip stuff. Yeah, so that'll be fun. That'll be like a lot of fun for people to get to see those.
Oh, so it's the whole trilogy.
It is the whole trilogy. Yeah, it's 3 separate books. Yeah, that Melissa's doing for Steamy Lit. The cover caught my eye while I was in the O'Hare Airport. Yay! It's been so interesting because I'm indie, you know, I'm hybrid, but I've never seen my books in like airports and Target and, you know, BJ's and Waterstones. And so it's really, really cool I was on tour. We did 5 cities in 7 days before I let go. And every airport, my husband who was with me would run to the like bookstore and like take photos and videos. Like, look, you know, Raleigh, Atlanta, you know, he's more excited than I am.
But that's just amazing exposure. I love that. For you, that you're in the airport and more people are picking you up and discovering you that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And this cover is really important to me because I wanted this beautiful Black woman on the cover. And then I was like, I just want to see it. I want to see her in airports. I want to see her, you know, in Target. And then it was selected as a Good Morning America buzz pick. And it was on their Times Square billboard. And I was like, look at her, you know, I was just so proud, you know, of our team, and just to see that cover there, it really meant a lot to me.
So getting into the book, I guess we can finally start diving into the book. Let's see. So this one is this your first true second chance romance where the main characters have had an actual like romance before, you know, the present day? Because a lot of your romances I have noticed where it's like they meet like one night maybe 5-10 years ago, and then, you know, they reunite a decade later. But then here it's like they actually, you know, had a full-on relationship, a marriage, kids and everything. Is this your first time writing something like this?
It's my first time writing something like this. I mean, some people consider the Kingmaker duology, All the King's Men, they consider that a second chance romance because they did have, I guess it was a fling. It's 2 weeks in Amsterdam. And then they reunite like years later. But it's definitely my first time writing a divorced couple. Some people don't realize this actually is the first book I ever wrote. So I wrote this book like 15 years ago. A version of this book like 15 years ago. I never thought it would see the light of day. I was like, oh, it was crap, you know? So literally I wrote this book before my debut novel. And it was in third person. The names were different. The title was different. There was no dog. There were 2 kids. There was grits. There was a divorce. There was no friend group. Like we definitely reconstructed the book. But the first iteration of it, I wrote like 15 years ago. And I always joke that this book, and you probably heard me say this in LA, Lacey, I always joke that this book was waiting for me to grow up, you know, because I never thought that I would come back to it. I just thought it was kind of like an exercise in, can you do this? And my husband was the one who was like, what about, you know, after Real, I didn't know what I wanted to write. And he was like, what about that divorce book? And I was like, it's crap. And he's like, no, go back and look at it. So really, if he hadn't encouraged me to do that, the book definitely wouldn't exist because I would never have gone back to it. So I'm glad that I did.
So your husband knows like everything that you've written. Is there anything else he could probably, you know, bring out into the light?
See, this is the thing. I know that there are people who write spare books. You know, they're like, I have all these stories I've written that I don't do that. Like the only time I write is like, usually something's made me mad or, you know, like I write when I'm kind of like compelled to write. So I don't have books that I'm just like, ooh, if stepbrothers ever get big, I got a stepbrother romance over here in my back pocket. I'm not that chick. You know what I mean? I think my readers know, what makes me write, and what I love to write about. And so I'm usually writing because I have something I really want to say. And so I'm not somebody who's going to like, ooh, let's hold that for, when it gets popular or, whatever. Usually there's an urgency to me getting it out. So this was like my practice book, like, because I was, writing for nonprofits. I was writing articles for Modern Mom magazine. I was, writing around autism advocacy. Like, my background is journalism. That's what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about fiction. And I wrote that kind of like, could I do that? Oh, apparently I can't because this sucks, And then I came back to it later. So
you had a gem and you didn't know it, girl.
it was,
Yeah.
Believe me, it was not a gem when I picked it up. It was crap. I was like, it took a lot to rework the book. And I always say the book had all the hurt, but none of the healing. And I think it was because I had a lot of growing to do, like as a mom, as a wife, as a human, as a friend, before I feel like I had some of the things to say. And I've been really, really open about the fact that I was diagnosed with depression while I was writing this book. And 10 out of 10 don't recommend that. But I think that if there hadn't been this intersection between what was going on in my real life and what I was writing, I don't know that I would have had as much empathy for Yasmin as a character. I don't know if I would have had as much compassion or given her as much grace. I'm really a lot more like Josiah. I'm a lot less emotionally available. And I was really resistant to, I've been in therapy before, but in this stage of my life, I was resistant to it because I didn't want to admit that I was actually depressed. When I was in therapy before, it wasn't because of depression. It was marriage counseling. It was, a big transition. It was never because of something like depression. And so I kind of ran from therapy for a while. So I was kind of Josiah in a lot of ways.
So did you write Josiah as a reflection of yourself, or like men in general who
I think I wrote Josiah as a reflection. I think there are aspects of it that do reflect me, but my intention with Josiah was specifically people who there's a stigma around it. I think the stigma is culturally, it's there. I think when you get into marginalized communities, it increases. And then I think when you get to marginalized men, it's most prevalent, especially Black men. And so for me, that was my intention, was to aim at the stigma that would keep people, but in this case, Black men, from seeking help. And Black women and marginalized people and everybody, I think one of the things that this book has been a very different experience for me. It's been resonant for people, I think, in a different way because of all of the on-page therapy. And weekly, I get somebody who messages me saying, I had not wanted to go to therapy. Now I'm in therapy, or as soon as I finished the book, I called my insurance company to see how I could get into therapy. Like, it's been really interesting. I've had things like that happen, like with Long Shot. Women would message me and say, I left an abusive relationship after I read Long Shot, or, I called my mom who I hadn't talked to in years, or now I'm volunteering at a shelter. Like, for me, impact is kind of the first metric of success for me with a book. So I've had that before, but this is just different because it's so personal for people when they're talking about, therapy and avoiding it or needing to be in it. And somehow this book spurred them to do that. It's a really humbling and you kind of a unique position to find yourself in as a writer, to feel that connected to people's like personal choices. It's very impactful for me,
Did you find it hard to write about Yasmin's depression while you were being diagnosed with depression? Because that got very emotional. And
yeah, I think I ended up turning in this book almost half a year late. because it was so difficult. And I don't know if it was just difficult to write that character because of depression, or I think it was just difficult to write, because of depression. After Real was really an undertaking, like, for anyone who's read Real, there's like a movie going on, and there's a script, and there's like like Harlem Renaissance timeline. And then there's, I tell people by the end of Real, I literally had like a map of 1920s Harlem on my wall, stacks of books that I'm reading, like Bessie Smith and, autobiographies. Like, it's just a whole, it has the lupus. It was just a lot. And when I finished, it wasn't that book made me depressed, but it just took everything to get it done. And I didn't realize, my doctor had told me right before COVID hit that I had early markers for depression, which I kind of just ignored, because I was thinking, that's just my life. That's just my life. I have a lot of stress in my life. That's just my life. But when and then I wrote Queen Move after that. And then I wrote Real after that. And then after I wrote Real, I was like, I think I'm done. Like, I don't think I'm going to write for a while, but I didn't think it would be as long as it was. It was like, it had been maybe 5 months and I couldn't write. And so that's when I went to a writing coach, and I'm like, I got writer's block. I can't write. I have writer's block. And she had a session with me, and she's like, I feel like it's something a little more insidious than writer's block. You might want to talk to a therapist. Nah, I don't think so. So then I went to a life coach, and I've been telling people that the life coach, God bless her, after about an hour with me, she was like, I really feel like the rigors of life coaching would break you right now. And she was like, you need to see a therapist. And it took me 3 shots, just like, when you talk about these characters reflecting some of my experience, my mental health journey, a lot of my journey is in this book. It took me 3 tries, just like it took Yasmin 3 tries. And then before I found the right therapist, and before I found the right medication, getting on antidepressants, all of those things that Yasmin experiences were really like parallel journeys. And my mental health journey really informed a lot of that aspect of her storyline. But it was very difficult to write. I probably would not have been able to write it had I not gone into therapy. Because when I was in therapy, I joke with people, I'm afraid to send my therapist this book because she might charge me. Literally, she'd be like, wait a minute, wasn't that in our session? Because no, I'm so serious. She told me to be my own gentle observer. And I was like, oh, that's so good. That's so
Write that
good.
down.
Write that down. I mean, there was so much that she really helped me work through. And then because I had worked through it for myself, I could help that character work it through. But there was so much about Josiah that was really a mystery to me. Like, even until I felt like I understood Yasmin completely, because so much of her journey was mine. Josiah, I felt like I was unraveling him even up until the end. Because there was so many roadblocks, that were up that we had to kind of deconstruct in therapy. And I think for me, even as a writer, there's a scene at the end when he has this big breakthrough and he finally cries. That scene was very emotional for me. As I was writing it, I didn't know there's details. He talks about how each loss lives in his memory in vivid detail. And I didn't know those details until I started writing them. It's like he's this little boy sitting on the porch, waiting for his parents to come, and it's cold. I didn't know those things until I got into the scene. So it was like, for me, even still, I felt like I was learning about Josiah as I was writing him. Which was a different experience for me. It's not like, okay, write out my character sketch and he's got this and he's this and he's this, I felt that more with Yasmin than I did with Josiah, like that understanding of who she was. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, I think Josiah was harder to write than Yasmin.
Yeah, we got some comments about the therapy in the book.
Right.
And I really love how you write kids in your books. They are always just such vivid characters themselves instead of being like just part of the plot, especially the oldest daughter and her relationship with mom and then
Deja.
unraveling where those feelings came from felt so real. And I'm like, I could see this actually like happening in real life. Her hearing that, blaming the mom, siding with like,
Right. And I really felt like part of why, I mean, I always I don't like characters who feel like props or cardboard, you know, like they're kind of like just there to take up some space. Like I like people to feel like, what's going on with them? You know, like you give them enough where they feel like these feel like real people too. But I think with this book, the kids were so important because it was important to understand that these things happened not just to Yasmin and Josiah to break up their marriage, but it happened to the entire family unit and deconstructed that entire family. And those ripple effects were not just felt with them, but with their children. And that was really, really important for me to demonstrate, I guess. And so the kids had to be really vivid. And formed, like fully formed. And Deja is so hard for so many people. Like I get so many comments about Deja needs to be spanked, Deja needs to be there, you know. And I think it's it's very telling, I think. And I understand it. Like I understand people's frustration with Deja. But I hope that they, you know, understand the tightrope that Yasmin and Josiah are walking, navigating trauma with the child, you know, and trying to figure out what's the balance of setting those boundaries and being a responsible parent, but then also giving that child space to express, and then to like know when to pull and know when to give space and all of that. So that's a difficult space. And I of course I always do lots of interviews for anybody who kind of tracks with my creative process. Interviewed therapists, and then had about maybe 5 therapists, interviewed about 5 therapists, I think. And had about 3 of them beta read. So that was really, really important to have, because there's so much on-page therapy. I think there's 5 therapy scenes in the book, like actual therapy scenes. And I'm not a professional therapist. So their input was invaluable. Also interviewed lost moms, you know, moms who had lost children. Having their input and had them beta read as well was very important.
This one's an interesting question. Was it a struggle to toe the line between women's fiction and romance?
You know, for me, I feel like most of my books are that. You know, like for me, it feels like a lot of my books are this kind of blend of women's fiction and romance. I think other people are more cognizant of it than I am. This is a book that, especially because it's traditionally published and because of the way it's marketed, because of the cover, because of a lot of choices that we made as a team, is a book that has drawn a lot of non-romance readers, which has been a great experience for me, because that's what I want for my books. I want everybody, you know, reading my books. But I also think that there's always a really healthy dose of what people would consider women's fiction, because I'm constantly centering a woman's journey. There's usually very like kind of layered, complex plots. And I think for me with this one, it's been interesting because a lot of romance readers are like, it's not as much spice as I'm used to from Kennedy. And then non-romance readers who don't usually give romance a chance, but really love this book and are surprised. They're like, I can't believe I love a romance novel. And then they're like, but it's really spicy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I'm getting both responses, you know, where romance readers are like, oh, I thought it was going to have more sex or more whatever. And then the people who are usually reading women's fiction and thrillers and things like that, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, sex in the garage, you know, it's like, you know, so, I mean, honestly, when we, as a team with my publisher, when we sat down to talk about this story, we talked about it as romantic women's fiction. And that's how I've always thought about it, but there is no, you don't walk into Barnes and Noble and there's a section called romantic women's fiction. You have romance and you have women's fiction, and I'm kind of like in the middle. But I often feel that tension because there's a lot of activism in my books. Most romance novels don't start with a pipeline protest, on protected native grounds. It's fine. I think I've gotten used to not fitting into neat boxes. I never have. I don't know if I kind of ever will, but I think that those readers who find me, if there's something resonant about my stories, they're like, I don't know what to call this, but I like it, So, but I do think I think it's an interesting dynamic that I felt more with this one, mostly because so many non-romance readers are engaging with the book in a way that maybe I haven't had before. So,
because I noticed, one of my friends pointed out, the ARC says contemporary romance on the back, but the published book says women's fiction. And they pointed out, I swear it said romance. And then the finished copy. So it is really both. Like your book
interesting.
I really think, and I wonder, I don't know, like I had not noticed that. I do know that we wanted to cast a really broad net because we felt like the story was capable of that. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes something is so clearly just romance that if you cast a really wide net for it, you're going to get a lot of critiques. You're going to get a lot of people who don't usually read romance who don't like it. So you really market it pretty narrowly. But I think we felt like this story was capable of reaching beyond romance, which it really has. And so maybe midway before the final, they were like, ooh, look at all the non-romance readers we have. We're going to call this contemporary fiction or something. I don't know what they're called. I haven't even looked at it. But I do think that I was checking with my editor, like, is this too racy? Like, do you think this is too racy or whatever? And she's like, no, go for it. But I think for me, it wasn't as much the tension as far as like spice for me was not an issue of subgenre. Like it was not an issue of romance versus women's fiction. For me, and I know that people call it a slow burn, and I understand that's a function of us needing tropes. We need to label it something. So people call it a slow burn, and I would call it a slow burn if I was speaking in tropes. But for me as a writer, understanding what the book is doing, it wouldn't have felt right for me for them to get together before they had healed separately, because that's what drove them apart, was their own inability to deal with their grief, to deal with their trauma. Yasmin has this line, we were completely incompatible in our grief, which they were. They're driven apart. So for me, it made sense that it's only as they begin their healing journey, it's only as they begin to unpack the things that destroyed them that they come together. So for me, the slow burn and the delay of sex was not a function of making it a slow burn and creating tension. It was a function of what would feel healthy for this couple. Mm-hmm. And that is also a part of what makes me, because I think in A Second Chance, part of what makes it believable is what's different. Like if they broke up in the first place, how have they changed? What's different? And I think a good chunk of the story is showing how they've changed and how they're preparing for one another. Also just figuring themselves out, but then as the process of figuring themselves out, healing themselves, being ready to be together.
Did you ever consider writing flashbacks, like throughout more of the book, instead of them just talking about what happened, but, writing the actual previous scenes? I'm curious if you ever considered writing that.
I think we played around with it some. I think it could have felt jerky, like jerking people back and forth. I think that chapter 13 is the scene, it's the most pivotal scene as far as what broke them up and really encapsulates what happened, because they recount it like in their own, it's from Josiah's perspective, recounting what happened. And instead of like doing this back forth, I made the choice of dropping those things into their present point of view, meaning as they're thinking back to how it was, there will be like a paragraph where we are in the car with them when they're actually like having sex, you know what I mean? And they're thinking about, you know, what that was like. Or, you know, in the beginning, obviously it starts off fully in the past where he's asking her to marry him. I don't think I wanted to do much more like actual full scenes, because I didn't want to, it felt complex enough for me what we were doing, and I didn't want to jerk the reader back and forth, but I did want them to have a sense of what it was like before. And so chapter 13 was so pivotal that I hoped the reader would trust me to fully immerse them strategically into that part of their past, you know, when they are having that kind of healing conversation, and they're revisiting what happened, you know, figuring that out. Or that scene actually comes with his therapy, but when he's in the process of like healing, that's when that chapter 13 flashback comes. It's when he's in therapy. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a real cutting room floor kind of writer. You know, people are like, oh my gosh, I have all these bonus scenes. I have all these like scenes that I cut out. I'm a pretty lean writer. When people ask me for bonus scenes, I have to write them. You know, like I don't usually have a lot of stuff that I don't use in the book. And so I don't, but it takes me a long time to start writing. But once I write pretty much only what's going to be there. Maybe a little bit that the editor's like, oh, could we cut this? Because I think the initial version of this book was like 150,000 words. Wow. And it's somewhere around maybe 110 now. And so none of that was flashback. Like, it was all just me figuring these people out, because I was writing it when I was really, really depressed, you know, and I was in a really dark space. And I just was writing almost blindly. It felt like I was writing in the dark. And it was only when I really started going through therapy that I could see the book clearly, like, oh my gosh, what is all this crap? Okay, we don't need any of that. That's gotta go, you know? My poor editor, she was like, oh, we were aiming for 100,000. I see it's 150. Okay.
Just 50% more than we expected.
Just another half a book. And I'd already told her, I don't write a lot of extra. Like, I'm a pretty lean writer. You know, I gave her the whole spiel. And she's like, okay, if you consider an extra 50,000 words lean, you know, so yeah.
Oh, I also love, oh, go ahead.
No, you can go. Fine.
Okay. I wanted to bring up the friendship group in this book, because I really love how all three of the women are so different, but there's still so much love between them. Did you like were their characters like fully fleshed out and formed in your mind when you went into writing this one? Or did you have to sort of, I don't know,
Where did she go?
I don't know. I think I know what she was going to ask.
I accidentally went back into the previous screen.
We're back. It's
okay. It looks. Hi. Oh, did you pop out? You popped out for a second.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
No.
I accidentally pressed something and it took me away.
No, it brought you back. But you were asking about the friend group and if they felt fully formed. You know, it's funny because as I think about it, there is one bonus scene that we cut in that 50,000 words, and it was one of their scenes. But I'm saving it for Soledad's book. But I think So I think there was some exploring and figuring it out. The only thing I knew was that I wanted them to be very different from each other. I wanted them to represent kind of these different points of view as far as women is concerned. I knew that I wanted one of them to be a stay-at-home mom who was, really, really committed to her kids and to her home. I wanted one to be very career oriented, which is Hendrix, who's like, I don't need no kids. I've got the rich auntie energy over here. I'll show up and then I'm out. And then Yasmin, which is kind of a blend of both those things. And I wanted them to be okay with each other, because so often, and I've talked about this, so often in culture, culture kind of pits us against each other. Like, you stay home, you're lazy. You work outside of the home, you're a negligent mom. You don't want kids. Are you even a woman? Like, we always judge our choices. Women's choices are always judged. And sometimes we are pitted against each other. And I really wanted to depict a friend group that had these completely different ambitions and perspectives who coexisted and really loved each other. And Yasmin learns a lot in therapy. She learns how to lean on other people. She talks about how she isolated herself during depression, even from people who were in her life before. And I think it's not that those people are not in her life at all anymore, but that she found her people. Do you know what I mean? It's like she kind of found these two women who she really, really clicked with. And that was exciting for me. I love Hendrix and Soledad, so I'm excited to write their books.
Do you know who's next? Is it?
Yeah. Oh, I'm writing Soledad now. So yeah.
Ooh, okay, so
I was going to talk about this.
Yeah, she's also very, like, I love that she wasn't, I mean, she kind of was the other woman, but nothing in a negative sense,
She wasn't a bad person.
Yeah, she wasn't a bad person. She was just a woman who was also in love or falling for someone, falling for the same guy.
I think Vashti gets so much hate mail. People hate her, but I get it. They hate her because I don't hate her because I didn't feel like she was a villain. But a lot of people hate her because they're like, she's not supposed to be with him, and I get that, like in the context of like, I'm reading romance.
A single
man. They've been divorced for 2 years, and they're, both talking about moving on with their lives. And I wanted it to feel real. You know what I mean? I think, and I'm always walking that balance because I know that romance is like, for a lot of people, escapism and fantasy. And for me, the fact that we get an HEA is fantasy enough because real life, that doesn't happen. So for me, I'm like, there's your fantasy. And you will get other elements, but I really lean into what feels real for me. And for me, it feels real that after 2 years, a grown-ass man starts to think I might start dating, I think that some of that comes out of not just Josiah being a grown-ass man. I think it also comes out of, and I really wanted people to have this sense. Dual point of view is so crucial to this book. Because if we didn't have Josiah's point of view, I don't know that we would really understand how hurt he is and how lonely he is. I think the first time we're in his point of view, it's just this quiet, and it's just him and Otis in the house, and he's talking to Otis, and he talks about how much he misses like the clamor of his children and his children's friends and the life that he had with Yasmin raising these children. And that even though he gets to see them, he doesn't have that anymore. And there's just this sense of kind of aloneness. And I really wanted the reader to experience that with him and understand what might even drive him to say, okay, I don't want to feel like this forever. And I really think a big part of it is I need to work Yasmin out of my system. Which of course, good luck with that. That didn't happen. But I think Vashti was in a very difficult situation because Josiah, after 2 years, is like, I want to start dating. I want to move on. Of course I do. And he thinks that he can. But the reality is, being around Yasmin that much, he realizes, okay, this is really unfair. Like, I'm not ready to move on. And he has this line where he's like, I don't know if I will ever work her out of my system. So I'm not really sure what to do here, because I can't have her, but I can't get over her. And I've tried dating, and that's not fair. So I'm kind of at an impasse. And I think he's still trying to figure out, how am I going to negotiate this when they go to Charlotte, So, and I think a lot of readers, I understand why Vashti is so difficult for a lot of readers, and especially the fact that they have an intimate relationship. Like I had so many conversations with my beta readers, with my publisher, like, am I sure I want to do this? Because I know that it kind of breaks a little, like an unwritten romance rule, but I don't like rules. I mean, for me, the only rules in romance that I honor are the ones that are genre defining, meaning you're supposed to have a happily ever after, you're supposed to have a central love story. If I give you that, this is a romance by definition. Anything else I do, good luck, And so that was it was a difficult decision, but for me, it also made the book feel realistic. It also made it more difficult in a lot of ways. It was jarring. I think for Yasmin too, it jarred her. Like, God, I really may never have him again. I think there were several moments with Yasmin where she's like, well, I think you have to understand too, Yasmin is coming out of this fog. If you ever lived with depression, there is this fog that is over you. And, well, in some cases, in my case, it felt like for over a year, I was in this fog. Like there were actually, when I started therapy and when I started taking my antidepressant, it felt like a fog lifted. And I looked around and there were certain aspects of my life that were in shambles. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, wow. It's like it was going on while I was in this fog. And I think that's a little bit how some of it is for Yasmin. She talks about, in one of her therapy sessions, she talks about waking up in a nightmare that she made, and I think that's the sense of when you start coming out of that, it's like, whoa, all of this was happening while I was just trying to stay alive, while I was just trying to survive. There were a lot of ships that were sinking. And I think that's what Yasmin is negotiating. And I think it's really jarring for her to see just how far from really the love of her life, she is at this point.
I think that definitely made it so raw and real and necessary for his journey, though. So
yeah, it was hard. I know it was hard for a lot of readers. I do. And I think even in this comment here, I think the intimacy with the chef made him realize he was not ready to move on. I think there are parts of that are true, because he talks about how, after he just kind of was like, that felt like a betrayal, even though I know it's not a betrayal. Technically, it felt like one. And there was something just incomplete about it, completely.
Did you ever consider having Yasmin move on in this way as well, or was she not ready
sexually?
For that?
You mean sexually? I don't know that Yasmin was really. It didn't occur to me, not because I'm one of those people who's like, I don't want to see women have sex, but I also didn't want to do it just for the sake of it. I think Yasmin and Josiah were kind of in different places as far as moving on. I don't know that Yasmin would have even started dating if Josiah hadn't. And so for me, and I don't know that Mark was, and maybe I could have written him differently, but in the context of the story, I don't know that he was compelling enough for her, for her to take that step. So it didn't occur to me to do that for the sake of it. You know what I mean? Like, I know some people are like, well, if the man has sex, then the woman needs to have sex too. And I don't think that way, because I would also write a story where the woman has sex and the man doesn't. Like, I think it just depends on the story that I'm writing and those characters' individual journeys. I think it was a really big step for Yasmin to even date for where she was and what she was healing from. So because I don't believe that Yasmin ever fell out of love with Josiah, and I don't believe that Josiah ever really fell out of love with Yasmin. But I feel like Josiah had a lot of anger, and Yasmin didn't have a lot of anger. She had guilt. She did have frustration with Josiah because he wouldn't go to therapy and because they were so incompatible in their grief. But I think Josiah had a sense of, you gave up on us. And I do think that him wanting to move on was part of that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Normally I get a little annoyed when the hero moves on, like that. I'm like, oh man. But in this case, it was just so understandable because of how devastated he was by what Yasmin did. Like, he didn't expect her to ever, ask for a divorce, so it did feel like she was one who had to actually make the first move, in order to repair that relationship.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to be really careful because I'm really protective of Yasmin. And I think Yasmin has enough guilt for all of us. You know what I mean? And it's not all her fault. You know what I mean? Like, I think that over the course of the story, I was very protective of Yasmin because so often we are harder on heroines than we are on heroes. Like, in the context of romance, it's like a man does something and it's like, oh, he's an alpha male. And then a woman does, and it's like, bitch, why? You're too stupid to live. It's like, and for me, I was very protective of the decisions that she had to make to survive. I think we are understanding, along with Josiah, how desperate it was for her. Like, he doesn't even understand at the beginning of the book how dark and how hard that season of her life was. And there's one point where Deja says something really nasty. She calls her mom crazy. And there by the river, and he goes, don't ever call your mom crazy. And he starts unpacking all of the reasons why, we all lost Henry, but she carried him and she did. And it's like, as he's saying it, he's like, he realizes he's never really processed that from her perspective. And he even says something like, why wasn't I able to do this before? Why wasn't I able to see this from her perspective, like, before? And so over the course of the novel, Josiah is starting to understand exactly what Yasmin went through. And so are we. You know what I mean? It's like they have that conversation, that kind of pivotal conversation in Charlotte, where she says, I couldn't save our marriage and save myself. And I understand that the consequences of me asking for a divorce, but if I hadn't, it could have been potentially fatal for me. And I think that, I write something like, the word fatal hangs between them like a noose, which is a very kind of vivid description for something like that. Then it just really hits him, I think, in that moment, what she means. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense, like how desperate it really was for her. Yeah.
And you did mention Otis, and I love how just like intuitive he was. He's like, I know he needs me. I'm gonna go meet him. I'm very much a dog person.
His emotional support.
Yes.
Dog. Yeah. It's so funny because somebody asked me, is Otis Aunt Bird?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They asked me, they were like, is Otis the spirit of Aunt Bird? And I was like, I had not intended that.
That's so funny.
So yeah, Otis was, and it's so interesting because my editor it's so funny because people would do like reading vlogs, and a couple of them were like, if this dog dies, Kennedy, if this dog dies, right?
No.
And my editor was like, if you can do whatever you want to do. She's like, I don't care about spice, I don't care about any of that, but you cannot kill Otis. You cannot kill
Oh
Otis.
my God, that would have
And
been
they're
like
actually
a
in the
breakup.
original version, Otis did die, like in the original version. And my editor was like, "We can't do it. We cannot do this." And I was like, "Okay, okay." And I remember I was talking to Sarah McLean about it, and she was like, "You can't kill dogs. You cannot kill dogs." And I was like, "Okay."
That's the unwritten rule of romance.
That's the real unwritten rule of romance.
Yes.
Josiah can have sex with other women, but we cannot have Otis die. I got it now. So yeah. But it worked. It worked. I'm glad Otis survived.
Oh, speaking of Sarah McLean, I saw you did a name drop of Sarah and Beverly Jenkins.
Yes,
in the
absolutely. Paying homage.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're two heroes of mine. So, you know. Not Otis. I know. He survived. My editor she was protecting you guys. I was not going to kill Otis just for the sake of killing Otis. Like, it was a big part of Josiah's breakthrough. But I'm glad that I didn't do that, because I was very pleased with his breakthrough scene with the therapist. Like, for me, it felt like an continuation of a growth arc for him, going from completely resistant to therapy to literally like scheduling emergency sessions with his therapist to process life, and so that felt like a better place for him to have a breakthrough than in the veterinarian's emergency room, which is where it was originally going to be.
So is there anything you can tell us about the next book? Do we have a title yet?
We don't have a title. I'm writing it. So like I was probably 80% done with Before I Let Go before I had the title. And they were like, "What's the title?" I'm like, "I don't know." And they're asking me now, "What's the title?" And I'm like, "I don't know." It's Soledad's book. I can tell you, I do a lot of interviews. I'm interviewing now. Like, I'm in the interview process. I have like all my subjects lined up. So I'm doing interviews now. I'm writing a little bit, but I usually don't write until, if a book takes 3 months or 4 months for me to write, at least half of that is like research and interview. And then like the last half is actual typing. So I'm still in that first part. But I can tell you that one of the songs that I always have a playlist, like before I even have the book, I have a playlist. The playlist is already like 30 songs. And one of them is Nina Simone's Feeling Good, because it talks about a new day, a bold life, and there's so much space that Soledad is going to reclaim in this book. And I'm really, really excited about that. And I have been telling some people her love interest is a single dad who has 2 boys on the autism spectrum. And I haven't written autism before, so it's really personal for me and exciting, and so I'm working on that now.
So excited. So is the next book after Real coming out then later? So what's the timeline of your releases?
Yeah. So in February, the Audible First that we were talking about will come out. And that cover will probably come early January. Like those don't have like a long lead time. Usually we'll probably announce the cover, the title, and all that, and then it'll probably drop, 6 weeks or something after that. So that'll be then. And then Score, which is the next book in the Hollywood Renaissance series, which is, for anyone who's read Real, it's Monk and Verity's story. I'm really excited about it too. I planned to write it earlier, but again, this book, I turned it in so late, I got so delayed. So it kind of threw my entire writing schedule off, and I'm just now catching up. Like the Close Up, we changed that release date 3 times, So I'm really kind of like Yasmin coming out of the fog from a writing perspective. But so the score, I'm hoping that that score will come out in late summer of 23. And even though I'm writing Soledad's book first, it's traditional. And so there's this long lead up, and that will come out in early 2024. So that's kind of how that will go. So even though readers won't get another Skyland novel until 2024, I will release like an indie novel. I love indie publishing, you know, so I'm a hybrid writer. I don't plan to change that. I'm really, really blessed to have traditional opportunities. Really excited about the re-release of the Hoop series and All the King's Men series with Bloom next year. That's going to be, I think All the King's Men will probably come in like June, somewhere around there. And the Hoop series will probably come in like October, somewhere around there. So with like brand new covers in, you know, in stores worldwide. Really, really excited for more readers to find, you know, those books because they're really special to me. So
I'm gonna need to make more space for your books now because you've already taken up a whole like square, you know.
You know, I think it's great.
More the merrier.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but I can't wait for a score. I still think about Monk and Verity sometimes. I'm like,
me too.
Wonder when they're coming.
Yeah, and it's gonna be. It's a really. I sometimes the word angst feels incomplete to me. It feels. It's an angsty story for want of a better word, but it's a very. It's definitely gonna break some romance rules. I'll just say that it's gonna break some romance rules. But I'm excited about that. My favorite, people assume, I think, because the Hoop series is my most popular series and Longshot is my most popular book, and I think the one most people know me for first. They think of me as like a sports romance person, you know, but I'm like, just that one series is sports romance. I haven't actually written very much of it, but my favorite thing to write is artist. You know, so if you look at the Grip series, if you look at the Soul series, if you look at Hollywood Renaissance, these are performers, they're actors, they're writers, they're singers, they're, you know, that's what I love to write most. And so the Hollywood Renaissance series is like playground for me, you know, because you've got a director, you've got an actress, now you've got a screenwriter and a musician, you know, and next you'll have something else. But I mean, I'll just say that the last book in the series is called Seam. So you have, you know, make of that what you will. But so I'm really, really excited about that. Really, really excited about it. And Real just released in German, which has been so much fun. Like I've been getting tagged on so many videos I don't understand. They're all in German. And I'm like, should I share this? Because she could be saying this is a book of bullshit. And I'd be like, look at this, Real in German, you know? And people are like, you do know that she said your book is awful. So I've been saying things like, oh my gosh, thanks for reading. I hope you enjoyed it. And they're like, oh, I love it so much. I'm like, okay, share, you know, I have no idea. And so that's on like the videos, like the posts, you know, you can do the little translation thing. You're like, oh, but we've already sold Score for German. So Score will come out in German really, really soon after it releases in English, actually. So it's the Ryan Renaissance. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement for all your upcoming books.
Thank you so much. Oh, somebody says autism. I'm an autism mama, so I get very nervous whenever anyone writes a character with autism. It's very personal for me. It's very personal for me too, which is why I haven't done it. Part of why I haven't done it, people are always asked, because obviously I'm really active like in the autism community, and we do Lift every year. We raised $130,000 last year. We're going to raise more this year. You know, I'm really, really passionate about autism advocacy, about our families. And I think autism is sometimes difficult to write, just in the sense of within our community. A lot of times people are like, you're doing that with your kid. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing that with your kid. I would never do that with my kid. Like it's like a lot of like, there are a lot of safe spaces to talk about what we do with our kids sometimes. And I think that it's very, for me, I hope that readers will trust me, just because I never do anything. If something is not my lived experience, you can best believe there's going to be like an army of beta readers on it. And so even with my lived experience is not as an autistic person, as an autistic parent. And so that's my lived experience, and I'm writing that. But there are people who are on the spectrum in this book, and I'm obviously incorporating those as beta readers and as subjects for interviews as well. Autism is very individualized, and there are a lot of similarities, definitely. And I think sometimes we get really dogmatic about it. And I think that one thing, I don't see my son represented a lot. I think that we've seen a lot of autism rep lately, which has been amazing, like to see the rise of neurodivergent representation. But autism is diagnosed, my son is 21, so I've been doing this for 19 years. And so the language has changed, the diagnosis has changed. It used to be Asperger's, it used to be PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. It used to be like all of these different things. And they're like, nope, that's not the language we use anymore. We have new language, we have new ways to diagnose, and you're constantly navigating that. But even with the rise, so now when we talk about autism, we talk about it in levels, like level 1, level 2. We talk about high functioning, low functioning. I know everybody's like glazing over, but now we talk about autism in levels. When you're diagnosing, it's level 1, level 2, level 3. And I see a lot of level 1 representation, which is, what used to be called like high functioning. I don't see a lot of level 3, which is my son. My son is essentially nonverbal. Even though he's 21, he's the equivalent of cognitively, socially 7 years old. He'll be with us in some capacity for the rest of his life. Those kids, grow up to be adults, and it's even though it's the same spectrum, it's an incredibly different journey for our families, and so I am looking to represent a big chunk of the spectrum with twin boys who have autism, and really just show like two kind of parallel journeys to show compassion for the entire spectrum. You know what I mean? And so that's what I'm hoping that I get the chance to do, is to represent the spectrum of the experience for our families. Right. And Delisa, yeah, my son is nonverbal too. I mean, he has some language, but I'm not seeing very many, autistic characters who are using devices to communicate, those who will be with their parents forever in some capacity. Those who, there's a lot of room for broader representation. As far as what those levels look like. And so it's a challenge, but I feel like every time I write a book, it's a challenge. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I making it so hard? But it's always worth it in the end. And people ask why I hadn't done it before. It's because of what I want it to be, and how much I knew it was going to take to do it the way I would do it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be worth it in the end.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, us as readers, we can see how much, effort and passion you put into these books.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Kennedy, are you reading anything good right now or recently? I always love your recommendations.
Yes. Let's see. I have to, I'm an audiophile, so most of what I read is audio, but I feel like I just read, okay, so I just finished You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty on audio, which was fantastic. I feel like I just read something that was really, oh, have you guys read sometime like when you're in the mood for like a, like just like quick, dirty, good, I don't even know why I couldn't stop reading this book kind of thing.
Yes.
Not that this is not great, because it absolutely is. I don't know if you guys have read The Driver. What is it? Gosh.
Nikki the Driver.
Nikki the Driver. Yeah, Nikki the
Yes.
Driver. And the one before that, which is, it's Kate C. Wells, who I really, really like. The one before that, I can't remember. Run, Posey, Run.
Yeah.
Run, Posey, Run was really good. I mean, it's stalkery, So Nikki the Driver it's
that
stalkery.
Was pure stalker romance.
Pure stalker.
That part. Yeah.
Pure stalker, right? So you've got that. I'm actually, for Soledad's book, I am rereading Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, because there's just that's one of my favorite books of all time, and it's just so fiercely feminist and forward, and there's a lot that is inspiring me there. I'm looking at my library. I just re-listened to Shadowheart by Laura Kinsale, because that happens annually. It has to.
We actually read Laura Kinsale since the last time we chatted.
I just love her. She's dense, like her work is denser than most of what you read in historical romance, but that's kind of what I love about it. And she's very messy. And I love that too. She's my favorite romance author is Laura Kinsale. So I read The Perfect Crimes of Marion Hayes, which is so good, by Kat Sebastian. A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. It's a transgender romance. Oh, it's historical. So good. So yeah, those are just a few of the ones that I guess. Oh, Honey and Spice, also really, really good. By Bolu Babaloa, I think. Those are kind of like some of my, now, if you have an idea of you, fix Half Blown Rose. I think it's Half Blown Rose. Will give you your idea of you fix. It's like a 40-year-old woman and a 22-year-old guy, her French lover, and she's like married, but her husband had like a secret baby that comes out. It's so good. The writing is fantastic. I think it's called Half Blown Rose. And it has an idea of you feel, but maybe a little bit more of a traditional HEA. If the idea of you frustrated you because you're like, I want my HEA, this book might scratch that itch, but give you a satisfying ending. Though I was satisfied with the idea of you's ending, because I don't, it doesn't always have to be that way for me. So.
Do you like the older woman, younger man trope? Is that why you gravitate towards that?
I don't know that I gravitate toward it. I don't actually read it very much. I think there's some writers who are just such excellent writers. Like Robin Lee's book, I think is just fantastic, and I listened to it on audio and it was just amazing. So I loved that particular book. And I love Half Blown Rose. I can't think of her name right now because I'm me and my brain is a sieve, but it's called Half Blown Rose. That should do it. The last name is Cross, I think. Last name is Cross. I just went blank. But those are really, maybe a few others. Oh, I also was reading Abby Jimenez's Part of Your World, which is also a older woman, younger man. I just thought about that, which is fantastic. I love Abby. A lot of people, she writes very emotional books. And I like people who write very emotional books because I write very emotional books. She has a little more humor in her books than I do, which is really, really, she does that really well. I just listened to that on audio, and Zachary Weber was narrating. And Julia Whalen. You don't get any, that's golden microphone, like Julia Whalen and Zachary Weber, Take me to church.
Did you ever read Julia Whelan's own book, her own audio?
Oh yeah. Well, I read Oxford Year. I have Thank You for Listening, but I haven't gotten to read it yet, and I will listen to it. She sent me the paperback, God bless her, but I don't do much eyeball reading at all. So I have it on my list to listen list, because Emily was just telling me that she's like, oh my God, you have to listen to it, it's so good.
Yeah, it was a fun one.
Yeah,
there's a scene that made me laugh out loud. It was
oh
like
my gosh!
It's
because the Oxford Year is not that. The Oxford Year is not that.
No, it's also a meta type of book. You know, it's very immersed in the audio world, and it kind of plays on, you know, romance and romance tropes, and then there's groveling that happens at the end. But it's so funny because it's so over the top. Because they know, you know, readers love over-the-top grovel.
Yes, and that's not what you usually would think of from Julia, just based on my Oxford Year. So I definitely am looking for. I've heard great things about it. Another book that I really want to read is it's the witch book. And it's blue, and she's sitting on a broom.
Oh, the society one.
Yes.
Oh,
what is that called? It was under fantasy for the Goodreads Awards. I forget what it was.
It was. It was. And one of my mutuals was saying, I wish it had been in romance, but it was in fantasy. I really want to. That one's on my list. I have it on hold through my library. I use my library. I have like six. I have like 6 audiobooks on hold right now. They're gonna all come at once, by the way.
Yeah,
that's what always happens.
Always. Is there anyone else who has any questions?
Yes, Lisa Cross Smith. Somebody said Lisa Cross Smith. Yes, Kendra, it's Lisa Cross Smith who wrote Half Blown Rose. Yes, it's really good. All her books are very emotional, very good, very well written, very mature. I'm leaning into mature right now, probably because I'm just getting older. But I'm writing older characters. I'm reading older characters. I'm drawn to things that are kind of grown. You know, I'm not really into, you know, a lot of miscommunication or a lot, you know, I'm not into, I'm in my mature era. So I'm interested in books that, you know, ask something of me right now. Well, for the most part. I mean, I don't know that Nikki the driver asked very much of it, but it gave me a lot. It gave me a lot. Nikki the driver. I love Kate C. Wells, and she has another book coming out, I think around December 20th. Like the next one.
Paranormal.
Yes, because I love her. I love the paranormal series that she has too, which is like betrayed mates.
It's
that
rejected,
kind of thing.
Yeah,
rejected mates. Yes, I love that series. I love some Kate C. Wells. Yeah, she's great.
Okay then. I guess that's about it, unless anyone else has any last minute questions for Kennedy. But it was so nice having you on again, Kennedy. We always love having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you, everybody. It was so good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. I thank you for reading. Love you guys.
Alrighty then. That's it. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.